Yo, Beth, that shit crazy.
Welcome, everybody, to All Even Live exclusive. My name is Barry Grant Jr., host of the All Even podcast. To my left is Mike Guido, host of Guido's Gridiron Blitz. Down at the bottom is Matt the Great Catarizzolo. And who we have on the show today is the host of Boston Ballin'. Welcome to the show, Gabby Hurlbut.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So, we always start off the show by asking, how are you doing? How's your family doing? Things are opening up, but, how are you still coping with this situation here?
Yeah, sometimes I think back to what 2020 was, and I'm like, wow, I can't believe what we all went through. We all just sat at home for a very long time and did absolutely nothing, and we handled it for months. And it's just crazy how much people really took for granted before COVID without realizing it. Because now, it's great to go out and actually do things and see my friends and just be in social situations again. And it feels kind of strange because you take that stuff for granted before, and going to sporting events. I mean, it's awesome. So it's, things have been going pretty well overall. Just happy to be getting life back to normal as much as we think normal is.
Yeah, definitely, man. I like going outside, but the problem with me is that the mask stays for me. So
Yeah.
people still look at me like I'm weird because everything's fine. No. Mask stays. So when I go hang out with these two jabronis over here, the mask stays.
You never hang out with us. What are you talking about?
Because you don't invite me anywhere.
All three of us have never hung. I don't think that's never happened, right, Matt? All three of us have never hung out together at one time at the same
time. Because Matt's a superstar and he hangs out with other people. He doesn't have time for
yeah, that's right. Matt big times us.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the first time I hung out with my friends when things started opening back up, and we were at a brewery, and I was like, this feels so strange to just be able to just go to a brewery with you guys. Like, who would have thought that I would get so excited about that? Because it was something that I had missed for so long.
Yeah, it's going to be a ridiculous summer.
Ridiculous. It is. Yeah, people are going to be so just going all out, I think, because we all missed that last year.
Definitely.
It's the weirdest thing.
Yeah.
I went to a grocery store I went to the grocery store like last week, first time without a mask on. And like, it was so awkward. Like it just was.
It's strange, isn't it? I still feel sometimes like I'm missing something when I don't have it.
Mike, I missed you with your mask on, as I don't really want to see your face.
All right.
Whoa.
Wow.
Well, listen, let's go ahead and start this. Gab, how did you start your journalistic career? Give us the origin story.
Yeah. So when I was looking at colleges, I was kind of thinking I might want to do a few different things, but I knew I wanted to do something sports related. So I was looking at schools that had a good sports media related program, because I was like, I want to go into something involving, sports media broadcasting.
Right.
So I ended up going to Ithaca College. I loved it there. I got a great experience. The classes were fun. I learned a lot, did some great internships when I was there. And it was awesome. Like, I loved that school. They had a great communication school, and I miss it a lot, but it was an awesome 4 years. So then I graduated from Ithaca in 2018. Then I started looking for jobs. I was just applying everywhere and anywhere, any part of the country. I didn't care where it was. I didn't care what the company was. I just wanted a job in sports, and I was not picky. So I was just applying for wherever. And then I threw in an application at ESPN, not expecting to hear anything. I was just like, yeah, whatever. It was just kind of another application I threw out.
You shot your shot.
The day after I applied, they got back to me and they said that they really were impressed with my resume and they wanted to do a phone interview with me.
Wow.
So I did a phone interview with them, and then it went pretty well. So they invited me in for an in-person interview, which was super intense. It was like 6 or 7 people I remember interviewing with. Each one came into a room individually to talk to me. I talked to each person for like 20 minutes or so. Then they left, and the next person would come in And I was like, how many more questions can I be asked? Like they were all asking different questions. It was like half regular interview questions and half like sports knowledge based questions. And I was like, I don't know how much I have in me I don't know how many more people I'm going to be talking to. This is really scary. So then I walked out of that interview and I was like, I am not confident at all. I was like, this might've been the worst interview I've ever had. But then sure enough, like a week and a half after that, they offered me a job there.
Wow.
And so I ended up taking it, and it was awesome, like doing social media stuff primarily and producing a lot of stuff, like working with our studio shows and producing some things and just doing a lot of hands-on work, like essentially getting paid to watch games and basically post content that our viewers would like. And I would sit there sometimes and I was like, I'm getting paid to do something that I would be doing at home anyway, which is watching a game. And it was an awesome experience. I mean, I learned so much there. And then I was, looking to do something else on the side and get involved with more just to keep enhancing my skills. So then I started my podcast, Boston Balling, in December of 2020. And since then, it's been great. I mean, my show's been awesome. I've learned a lot. Like it's all Boston sports podcasts because those are my teams and I just love talking about those teams. And so I bring a guest on the show every week that's somehow affiliated with Boston sports, and we talk and have a good time, and it's awesome. And so the podcast has helped me grow a lot of my skills and also continue to grow my network too. So I've been doing that since December and I love it. And I just hope to continue to kind of grow the following on it and just see what other opportunities open up now with the experience I have.
Definitely.
You're in the wrong room with a bunch of New Yorkers.
3 New Yorkers, right?
Yeah, that's okay.
So how do you feel about your Boston Red Sox this year?
I love it. I think something I will say about them that I said before the season started that a lot of people gave me a hard time for on Twitter was that I said the Red Sox will surprise people this year and be a good team. And some people kind of laughed at me, to be honest. A lot of Yankees fans laughed at me for it. And even some Red Sox fans were like, no, they're going to be so bad. Like, what are you talking about? Like, did you see 2020? I was like, yeah, I saw 2020, but this is not the same team as 2020. I said, first of all, they can still hit. They've always been able to hit. And they even last year, they were able to hit. It was just the pitching was horrendous. So then they went out this offseason, they made some changes to the pitching. And I said, look, like this is going to be a good team. And they went and they got Alex Cora back, who is actually a good manager because our manager last year wasn't really equipped to manage the team. And so they went out and they got Alex Cora back and they made some changes, and they're proving me right with that statement when I said I think they could be a good enough team to get a wild card spot in the playoffs this year. And granted, there's still a lot of season left, but from what I've seen so far, I really like what I've seen, and they're just as good as the rest of the teams in the AL East, if not better. I mean, Tampa's obviously right there and is a couple games ahead of us, and I think that it's going to be fun to see how the division plays out going forward. But I think the Red Sox are surprising a lot of people. Like I thought that they would. I did not think that they were going to be this good. I thought that at where we're at in the season right now, they weren't going to be this good, but they would still be good enough to be able to compete for a wild card spot. And I still believe that. And I think that as the season progresses, they'll still be a team that will be in the wild card conversation for the rest of the season. And I mean, I like what I've seen so far, and Chris Sale hasn't even come back yet. Right. So that's very exciting. And so I think, I give a lot of credit to Alex Cora, to be honest. I think he has a way of connecting with his players and motivating them that you don't see with every team, and just their attitudes and the way they approach games, just never being out of it. And every loss hurts them like they just lost the World Series. I think it's a really special group of players, and it's a lot of guys that just work really hard that want to prove people wrong. And I think Cora does a good job of just making the right moves at the right time, especially in games.
Yeah, I think surprising is definitely the best word to describe the AL East this year. I mean, you have surprising in a good way with Boston, and you have surprising in the worst possible way with the Yankees. So we're seeing a lot of things play out very differently. I remember when the Mookie Betts trade happened, I said, oh, that's a real shame because again, as a diehard Yankees fan, I love Mookie Betts. He was a very likable player. He was a skilled player. He's still likable now. He's one of the most likable guys in the sport. And I remember the other day during the Boston Yankees series at Yankee Stadium, they had Alex Verdugo mic'd up. And I'm like, you know what? You can't not like this guy either. He's such again, they traded one of the most likable guys and got back one of the more likable guys too. So you're right. They have a really, really good group there. They'll get Sale back, and that'll make them even more dangerous. So, and then with Tampa Bay, you now have Glasnow getting hurt. They lost Snell and Morton last year, and they're still just continuing to win games. They have a 1.5 lead right now in first place in the AL East. It's very shocking to see how all this is playing out. But I think on the crux of it all, I mean, come on, you got to be a little bit happy to see the Yankees just absolutely struggling.
Oh, I love it.
You can be honest. You can be totally transparent here.
I'm more than a little bit happy. My dad is actually a Yankees fan. And so
wow.
I've been giving him a hard time about it too. And he kind of tries to avoid the subject altogether. But he can't really get away with it for too long because I'm going to a Red Sox Yankee game at the end of June with him. It was his birthday present from me this year with him being a Yankees fan. So it's like June 26th, the Yankees are at Fenway and my dad and I will be there. So he will not be able to get out of the conversation at that point. But I think you're right. I think Alex Verdugo, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, you look at the Mookie trade and it's like, how could you trade a player like that? And I think a lot of us at the time were very angry, myself included, because it's like, yeah, where are you going to find that type of talent again? But you look at the longer term, and the Red Sox are a lot better set up now for longer term than they were had they not made that trade, because they did need to address the farm system, which was a significant issue. And it started with the Mookie trade, and then everything that Chaim Bloom's done since then has really been addressed, has addressed the farm system pretty significantly. And I think they have a lot of good young talent right now waiting to come up that could really significantly contribute in 2022 and 2023. And I think that that's super exciting. And I think going into this season, the expectations for the Red Sox were not supposed to be a team that could compete for a playoff spot. It was supposed to be a team that's kind of in rebuild mode, that has talent and could be good, but probably wouldn't be. But the fact that they're exceeding expectations right now and they still have all that young talent, I think that they're really set up for success in the future as well as right now. And I think in terms of when I look at the AL East right now as a whole, I think Toronto is still a team that's being slept on a little bit. I think that they're not fully healthy, first of all. And I think when they're fully healthy, they're going to be a team that's very, very good. I don't think that this year they're going to be a team that will make the playoffs based on what I've seen, just because of the injuries, and it might be too hard for them to gain enough ground to get a playoff spot now. However, I'm looking at the next couple of years, and that Blue Jays team is going to be very, very solid. And I think that the rest of the division needs to keep them in mind and keep them in conversations when it comes to longer term, because they have so much young talent over there that they're going to be really good. And I think with Tampa Bay, nobody ever understands exactly how they do it or what exactly their system is. And when they traded Blake Snell, I was like, what are you guys doing? But then in my head, I was like, knowing them, they're just going to find some other young stud and turn him into a star, because that's just what the Rays do. Mm-hmm. And somehow, like, everybody comes out and is just so talented when they come to the Rays. And, you know, we're even seeing that now, that it's like nobody understands exactly how they're as good as they are, but they just keep winning games. And they lost today. I just checked the score. They lost 8-7 today to the White Sox, and they lost yesterday. So now the Red Sox need to win again tonight, because that's a good opportunity for us to gain another game on them. But I think when it comes to the Red Sox and you compare them to the Yankees, we saw in that series with the Red Sox going to Yankee Stadium and sweeping them, which was fun for me. But I think
it was
just a side note there. That was fun. But I think looking at those two teams, I think Alex Cora knows how to make the right moves at the right times, more so than Aaron Boone does. I think he knows how to utilize his players a lot more, and he can connect with his players a lot more. And I think the players genuinely like playing for Alex Cora a lot more than from what I've seen the Yankees players when it comes to Aaron Boone. I think there's a level of respect that the Red Sox players have for Cora that kind of lacks a little bit more in New York. And I think the motivation is just not there as much. And I think the Red Sox they play games with more passion. And we also saw, I think, I'm sure, I don't know how you guys would feel about this, but from what I've seen from the Yankees, and especially in that series at Yankee Stadium, just more versatility from an offensive standpoint that the Red Sox have. I think they know how to create runs out of more than just hitting a home run. I mean, they can go yard, and we've seen them hit home runs, and they did have some big home runs against the Yankees in that series. But they also can play small ball, and they can hit singles and doubles, and they can steal bases, and they can create other things to happen offensively that I think is what makes their offense as good as they are, because they have a lineup that can do a lot of different things that I think the Yankees kind of lack, because there's a lot of home run heavy hitters in the Yankees lineup. And I think we saw a lot of that when the Red Sox and Yankees played each other. And, you know, with the Red Sox, I think the pitching is still a bit of a concern that needs to be addressed. And people are like, let's trade for a starter like a Max Scherzer. But I don't think I really like that move, just because you'd have to give up a good amount of prospects for him after Bloom already has worked to get all these really good prospects in the system for a Max Scherzer rental when you're going to be getting Chris Sale back. So I don't know how much I really like that move. I think the pitching is still the biggest concern, though. I think they've gotten some solid bullpen productivity this year, more so than they might have expected. I mean, Adam Ottavino is somebody that I would bring up, who at the beginning of the season, when we first got him, was very, very frustrating, because all he did was walk people, and then he would give up runs in close games. And it was just super frustrating to watch. And I said, if this guy could just tone down on the walks, he would be so good. And lately he's been very, very good. I mean, he came in last night, looked really good. I mean, we saw him pitch against the Yankees, and he's been good, and he's been a solid addition to this bullpen. And then, you know, you have other players that have been contributing too. Like, I really like Garrett Whitlock, who, I know these are names that might be painful for you guys to hear, but Garrett Whitlock's been very, very good too.
Garrett Whitlock, both former Yankees. All right, let's keep it going.
I love Garrett Whitlock. I think he's awesome. I mean,
even Eovaldi too.
He's a stud. Yeah, Eovaldi, I will say, has been a surprise in general, because when he came here, it's not like he was a miraculous pitcher before. You know what I mean? It's not like he was just like some stud, and he's not even a stud here. He has been inconsistent this season, but overall, so far from how long he's been here, overall, he's done a pretty good job. But I will say the pitching is still going to be the biggest issue that needs to be addressed. So I'm going to be curious if they make any severe moves at the trade deadline for pitching. And I think it just depends where they're at come around that time. If they're in contention, they might not make a lot of moves, but if they're not, then I could see them trading people like Ottavino and flipping him for prospects, or trading other people and just trying to make other moves. But I think maybe if they do anything at the trade deadline right now, it would be for pitching, because that's really the only serious concern I see right now.
Gabby, what is your thoughts on the pitching substance issue in Major League Baseball?
Yeah, you know, I've kind of gone back and forth on this a little bit. I think baseball, I think this has been going on for a lot longer actually, than when the league is finally deciding to crack down on it. And I've said it for a while, like, there needs to be some sort of consistent policy in place, because you know that it's not just one person doing it, and you know that it's a lot of people doing it. And Tyler Glasnow's comments blaming the league for his injury, I mean, that almost makes you wonder, you know, like, how much should they really be enforcing that? And is that something that you think longer term is going to be seriously a huge issue, when you have so many pitchers and other players like doing things like that, that it's like, how worth it is it really to enforce something like that? Because I look at that, and this goes way back, you know what I mean? Like, there have been players doing this for a while. So it's like, you're finally now in 2021 deciding to crack down on this. Like, I just don't know if it's really a super high priority right now, as opposed to, like, you know, you look at them deciding to crack down on something like this, and then you have like the Astros doing what they did, and the players get no punishment for that. And it's like, I just feel like it's almost the standards in terms of the league in general, and some of the things that Rob Manfred is putting in place is almost a little bit of a double standard, because it's almost saying like you can get away with some things but not others, and this is more important than this. And I think if you're going to enforce that, you need to start enforcing other things, because I mean, if you want to enforce that heavier, then by all means, sure, but like don't make it inconsistent to the point where like you're just completely ignoring other issues and you're only cracking down on something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Before you go, Mike, it's just the Major League Baseball has a hypocrisy issue. They've always had a hypocrisy issue, and the fact that they're trying to like be holier than thou is their issue. Like they just need to kind of like realize that their sport is one of those sports that people have to try to get an advantage because of what type of sport it is. Like, think about the batters. They use pine tar. They use all of these particular things so the bat doesn't fly out of their hand and hurt people, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Pitchers are looking at it like, hey, I'm throwing 100-mile-an-hour fastball here. I may need some grip here so I don't hurt somebody. So it's like,
and it's like they're trying to do it, but not because they want to cheat, more because it's like out of different intentions.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. So,
and so it's like, I mean, the league, I think, needs to just figure that out and start buckling down on everything if they're choosing to buckle down on that right now, because I think there's just a lot of inconsistency in general with Major League Baseball and what they crack down on and what they don't.
Definitely.
And not for nothing. Sorry, one more thing, Mike. Not for nothing, but you know, in the past 2 or 3 years, they've juiced the baseballs, they've deadened the baseballs. So they've thrown a lot of, you know, no pun intended, curveballs at these pitchers that they have to adjust with for like. And when they talk about spin rate and RPM and everything, well, it's like you give me different baseballs. Like I have to learn and adjust and how to do these things properly. Like when you talk about sunscreen and rosin and all the way to spider tack and all these other things, it's like you brought it up before. Glasnow said before, like you can't expect us to use nothing.
Yeah, like what do you want us to do?
And now that Glasnow said, quote, I 100% believe that this contributed to me getting hurt. When you're now putting the health of these pitchers because of the routine that you forced them to get into is now getting them hurt, that's a major problem. That is a major problem with Major League pitchers.
Hypocrisy.
Not cool.
So I love this conversation because I have it all the time with people like my dad and, you know, who's, I would say relatively old fashioned, but I don't think it's too bad. He's not a dinosaur yet. But I do think that the use of substance is an interesting conversation because I think it opens up a grander picture, right? Really what I think this is about, and again, I just kind of want to get your thoughts on this. You know, really what I think this is about is that Major League Baseball is seeing right now the massive dip in popularity, and they're attributing that to, I don't know why I can't say that word, but they are attributing that to the lack of hits, right? The increase in strikeouts. Okay. So I don't know if I remember seeing this stat a couple of weeks ago where we are on pace for the least amount of hits in a major league season in 100 years. We are already on pace to break the single season strikeout record for batters, not for pitchers. I guess it would work both ways.
Been 7 no hitters already.
Right. We have 7 no hitters.
Like the no hitters this year, it's becoming like not as special anymore because it's too common now.
There's so many, right?
Spencer Turnbull's throwing no hitters.
Yeah. It's like, wow, now you have like random pitchers throwing no hitters.
That's unbelievable.
Give me some Tic Tac stuff. I'll throw one too.
But like this is the lowest batting average, the major league average batting average in Major League Baseball history. It's just like the hitting altogether is just going down, right? Home runs are still at a premium, but
hitting,
you're seeing less doubles, you're seeing less, you know, sac flies, you're just seeing less of the natural game. And what I think this whole spider tack, you know, sunscreen, whatever, rosin that, you know, Major League Baseball is really cracking down on is they're viewing it as a method to try and fix what they perceive as the problem. It has nothing really to do with the pitcher or the act that the pitcher is doing.
It's a PR problem.
It's more of, okay, they're trying to create ways to get more hits. They're trying to create ways to get the ball in play more, right? Am I crazy for putting that out there?
I don't think so. I think that in general, the league is trying too hard to try to make the game more desirable for people. And I think that it's actually doing the opposite. And I
Right.
think that the more that they try to skew with the game and just change things, I think it's actually deterring people from wanting to watch baseball. And I think it's making them lose interest as opposed to gaining interest. And I think they're just trying too hard to implement things that they think is going to make the game more desirable for people, but in reality, it's making it less desirable for people. And I think if they continue down this road and they continue doing things like this, then they're just going to become less and less successful, and they're just going to keep losing their following, because baseball as a whole, we know in this country just isn't as popular as other sports, and that's just kind of always how it's been. But I think they're making things worse by everything that they're trying to implement.
I agree too. Now, kind of in the same, scope of conversation, futzing with the baseball is something that Major League Baseball's done forever. They constantly change. They cork it. They, take out a seam and make it they've lowered the laces. They've raised the laces. They've done a bunch of different things to the baseball. They make changes constantly, right? More of an on-field change, though, that I'm noticing that people want to get rid of is they want to get rid of the shift, right?
Yes, they
want to absolutely ban the shift. And I don't really know necessarily what that means or where you draw the line where, okay, the second baseman has to play on the second base side of second base, or same thing goes for the shortstop or something. Like, you can't have 5 infielders. You can't have 5 guys playing on one side of the field. Like, I don't know where you draw the line there, but do you think that Major League Baseball is getting close to a point where the shift will become a thing of the past?
I think it is, to be honest with you, because I think that the league is trying to adapt to a lot of different things that people are complaining about and are like, oh, like, I hate the shift. And like, I think eventually it's something that we're just never going to see again. However, I think you bring up a good point, because it's like, where is the line going to be drawn? Like, there's not really a clear way to determine, like, this person has to play right here and this person has to play here. So I think if they do decide to eliminate the shift altogether, then they need to really come up with a consistent way to basically just draw a strict line of like, okay, the second baseman has to be in this specific place. Like, the shortstop can't be any further than X, you know what I mean? And
Right.
it's going to be a difficult thing to address, but I actually do think that down the road, we won't see it anymore, because I know a lot of people don't like the shift. So I think that baseball is going to try to adapt to that and eliminate that as well. Because I think that they're just at the point now where they're just trying to make changes wherever they see fit so that they can just try to attract more of an audience. And I think that if people don't like the shift right now, because I know a lot of people that aren't a fan of it, I think that it's something that eventually they're going to be like, yep, we're done with this. Like, we're not, it can't, you're not allowed to do it anymore. It's not going to be a thing.
All right.
Yeah, right now I feel like, and it's really scary to even think about this, but I feel like baseball is kind of on a collision course between the owners and the teams and the players, because the players union and the owners historically have not gotten along ever. And it's only coming to blows now because we have all this stuff. We have the sticky substances. We have all these rule changes. We have the balls being changed. We have everything now. You can even go so far as to say that the MLB has completely and utterly failed to market their star players, which is why the popularity of the sport has dipped, right? Mike Trout, one of the greatest athletes in the history of American team sports, not marketed at all by Major League Baseball. That's why, at least in my opinion, I think they're overcompensating now with Shohei Ohtani. I think they're overcompensating now with Fernando Tatis Jr. Vladdy Jr. And you can find the same 5 guys. It's like Acuna, and those guys are stars. But when you fail to do it, you can't just overdo it now. So, I mean, Gabby, do you think that is true? Do you think that this could come to kind of a strike-ish type conclusion in the near future? Because I would be shocked if it didn't happen in the next 3 or 4 years.
I mean, yeah, I think so. I'm actually very, very concerned about the future of baseball in general. I think that it's just, the more that's being done now, the more I don't like the direction it's headed. And I'm very, very concerned about what this sport could look like in the next 3 or 4 years. Cause I think I love baseball, like it's my favorite sport. And what I know of baseball growing up is very different from when I watch baseball games now. And it's actually really, really sad to see that, because people that fell in love with the game did not fall in love with the game of baseball because of how we're watching it right now.
Right.
They fell in love with baseball because of what they've grown up watching, which is very much not the same thing as what we're watching right now. And I think eventually this is going to be the type of thing that they hit they hit like the point where they're like, okay, let's just change this, and this, and let's just cancel this out, and let's not do this. And then eventually, like, I think it might eventually get to the point where baseball is just kind of stuck and is at the point where it's not seeing any growth, and it's going to take a huge financial hit. And I think we're going to see that over time. I don't think this is going to happen right now, right away, but I think in the next 3 to 4 years, I'm very concerned about just the well-being of the sport in general, because I think that there's just too much being implemented and too much being talked about that I really truly feel like kind of is ruining the game of baseball as we all know it. And granted, 2020 was just a year that just put a lot of just a big damper on everything, obviously not just baseball, but all sports really. But I think the way that they responded to the 2020 season and COVID has a lot to do with the way that they're reacting to things now and the decisions being made now, because you did not see a lot of these drastic changes like pre-COVID really as much. And I think the way that we're watching baseball in 2021 could be different had COVID and the 2020 season not happened. And I think that I look at that whole situation with last year and the pandemic, and I look at that as being one of the things that is going to be a huge significant factor in just how much it's going to hurt baseball going forward. And I think it's really unfortunate to say that, because other sports I feel like have responded better to everything with the pandemic and have been able to kind of bounce back. And I mean, we saw football this year, and we saw basketball, and we saw hockey this year, and those sports this year were, I mean, obviously a little bit compromised, especially hockey and basketball were a little bit compromised in terms of like, schedule and stuff. But I think overall, you still kind of felt like you were watching the same game. Whereas with baseball, it's almost now like from 2019 to now, it's just a significant change. And I think the way that Major League Baseball responded to 2020 is going to be one of the biggest reasons why the league in general might just fall. And I think it's really scary, but I think a lot of people are kind of starting to pick up on this too, that they're trying to almost in a way overcompensate for all the money that they lost in 2020 because of the pandemic. And they're trying to just make drastic changes. And I don't see that changing. I think they're going to continue to make drastic changes and continue to do things to try to force the game to be better for people to watch and more appealing. But that's the key word, is forced. And it just feels forced, and it feels like it's not the same kind of baseball anymore. And it's just super upsetting. And I think eventually we are going to hit like this crossroads where it's just like, well, how much worse can this really get? And then I don't know what's going to happen from there. And it's really scary.
Well, my opinion is the rise of analytics caused the fall of baseball. That's just my opinion. I think that, you say that 2019 and 2020 is a different game. I can tell you that 10 years ago was a different game. That, the rise of analytics and, launch angles and this and that. And instead of teaching these kids growing up, like, listen, it's all about, making contact and being a good hitter and doing these things. Like, everybody's now going through the system. You have to mash home runs. You have to hit home runs based on the analytics is what's telling you this is a better hit than what a double is, or a single, or a smack down third base line. Situational hitting doesn't exist anymore because the rise of analytics has caused the dip in the actual game. So, I definitely agree with everybody here in regards to their opinions about baseball. We love baseball, and the fact that it's in this state, we hate to see it. But the question I want to ask you, I want to switch gears a little bit, Gabby, about your, the Boston Celtics. I have been highly critical of Danny Ainge. I think that Danny Ainge has not done a good job with this roster over the years, and we saw the fruit of his labor, so to speak. That this team wasn't that good. Offensively, they weren't that great. Jaylen Brown goes down. It's all Jason Tatum, which didn't make an All-NBA team, which is crazy to me. And, this team didn't have much. Now he steps down. Brad Stevens is now in that role. Where do you think Boston goes from here? Where do you think the first thing that needs to happen for them? Is it a head coach that they have to go hire, or is it they have to go ahead and try to shake up this roster and then worry about the coach later?
Yeah, I've had this conversation with a good amount of people, and I think when I think of the Celtics right now, one of the biggest things I will say is just there's a lot of frustration because this is a team that on paper was talented and is always good enough to go to the playoffs. They just never have enough to go all the way. And you see other teams around them that are continuing to build and get better. And the Celtics just never really had enough to go all the way. And I'm not the type of person that's going to put all the blame from how this season went on Brad Stevens, because there were a lot of factors that went into this season. I think, COVID was a factor. They had a lot of injuries, and obviously, like those are factors that were kind of out of their control. But I think at the same time, how this roster was constructed, there were just holes. And I think Brad Stevens as a coach did what he could do with what he had. And
Right.
I don't think that this was a Brad Stevens coaching issue. I think
agree.
there was just simply holes with the Celtics roster that we saw that other teams didn't have. And they've always had a lack of depth that I've been pointing out for years. And I think that lack of depth really comes back to haunt them in the postseason. And I saw that all the way up through this year. And I think Danny Ainge this past offseason tried to adjust and tried to address some of the holes, like bringing in Tristan Thompson and bringing in Jeff Teague, both players that we thought might actually be good assets to the Celtics.
Why though?
Didn't quite pan out because Tristan Thompson was the guy that we all thought was going to be that center that could really, because they've been lacking at the center position, and we needed somebody that could actually come in and contribute in that position. And we thought that Tristan Thompson could be that guy. And then he wasn't panning out. So I was like, all right, so we're back to square one. And then he goes out at the trade deadline and, makes a couple decent moves. And I'm a big fan of Evan Fournier. I think that they need to re-sign him because I think that he's somebody that really contributed to this team. And I think that I would like to see him come back. In terms of your question, though, I think Brad Stevens in the position that he's in now, when everything first came out, I was not surprised about the Danny Ainge stuff because there were hints that he was dropping in the past about, like his time with the Celtics maybe being done, and just in the past kind of making like really vague statements about how he might not be with the Celtics for much longer.
Right.
So his future with us was kind of in question anyway, as it was. So I wasn't necessarily surprised by that part, but I was actually surprised that they immediately made the decision to promote Brad before kind of even doing any real search for somebody else to fill that position. But I was like, this could actually be a good thing, because if anybody knows what this team needs, it's him, because he's the one that was with these guys day in and day out. And I do trust him to find a head coach that could really be a good voice for the locker room. And as much as I don't blame Brad for the issues of this season fully, I do think that maybe a new voice in the locker room would be beneficial. Somebody that can really communicate with these guys and get messages across in a different way than what Brad Stevens was doing. Because there were games this year where they just looked unmotivated when they were coming out.
Right.
And just games that they should have won that they didn't win, it was a lack of motivation. And I think maybe a different voice would be beneficial. And so I think it kind of all is going to go hand in hand. I don't think that Brad Stevens is going to be afraid to pull the plug on anybody on this roster unless your name is Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown, which I really pray that those two, he hangs on to, because I think that he needs to focus on building a team around those two, because those two guys are still so young and have so much potential to be a really, really great duo in the league. And I think their leadership styles are a lot different, which we've kind of seen on the court. And I think that just the way that they present stuff is different. But I think he's not going to be afraid to pull the plug on anybody. But I do think he's going to prioritize the head coach thing before the roster moves, because he wants to know that he has somebody in the locker room that he trusts to be able to really communicate with, no matter what the group of players are that he has on this team. And I think that's something that I think we're going to see first, is that we're going to see him hire somebody to be in that position, and he's going to make roster moves. And I think it might be hard for Celtics fans to see us part ways with certain players. Like, I think Marcus Smart is one of the players that is on the hot seat that we could see be leaving. And that's going to be a hard one, because I love him as a player and it's been great having him here. But if we can get something really good in return for somebody like Marcus Smart that could put us in better contention to win a championship, then obviously I would be okay with that. And Kemba, I mean, obviously you never really know fully what's true, but it sounds like right now that's kind of a two-sided thing, that he wants to leave and they want to trade him. So I think Kemba we could see go. I'm not going to make any assumptions about anything, because we don't know what he's going to do right now, but I think the majority of the players on that team are not safe and secure right now, because I don't think Brad Stevens is going to be afraid to move anybody. And I think that's what needs to happen right now, because defensively they still need help, because their defense was a struggle this year. And I think they have the potential to be really good. They just need a couple more pieces. And I've been saying this for so long. If they get the right pieces in place, I actually do think they could be a team that we could see go to the finals. And it's been a frustrating road for Celtics fans to see them get so far. And I really thought in the bubble that they were going to go to the finals. I really thought, based on what I saw and how I saw them playing, that they were going to beat the Heat and go to the finals. I really was confident in that series. And then, they didn't win that series. And then I was like, well, this is still a young team overall. Like, we need to get some more veteran leadership in this locker room, because they didn't have that. And I think that they still could benefit from some more veteran leadership on this team as well. So I think there's a lot that they can do, but they need to commit. And by commit, I mean, you either need to just do a full rebuild, or you need to commit to being willing to giving up young talent and getting actual veteran players in there that can help you be a championship caliber team. Because the Celtics right now, to me, are in the middle, where they're not in full rebuild mode, but they're also not good enough to win a championship. And you can't just sit here and just be in that mediocre middle stage. So you need to really commit. And I'm hoping that this is the offseason that they do decide to commit. I mean, Brooklyn, they committed. You know what I mean? Like, they gave up a lot of young talent to get James Harden and create a big three in Brooklyn that is really looking like they could go to the championship. And I think we need to be a team that picks a direction, because I look at this team right now and it's just unclear what direction they're trying to go in. And I think that's something that Danny Ainge was never able to do, was fully commit to a direction. And I'm hoping that Brad Stevens can change that, because I think he's the type of guy that has the capability to do that with how well he knows the players and kind of what they need. So I'm hoping that I'm excited for this offseason for them. I'm waiting to see what happens, but I think that Brad is not the type of guy that will just sit around. I think he's not going to be afraid to just make moves, no matter who has to be moved, depending on what he gets in return for them. I think that when we look at this roster come this upcoming season, it could be very different, but it could be a really good different.
Right.
And I'm just hoping that is, because I am just so tired of watching this team be so inconsistent, because inconsistent is another word I would use to describe this season. And just be a team that one day looks like, when fully healthy, they could go and win a championship, and then the next day just looks like crap. And so And granted, I mean, not having Jaylen Brown in the playoffs was tough. And I mean, as soon as he went down, my expectations for the playoffs went from little to literally zero. I still think the Nets would have won that series had we had Jaylen Brown, but I do think it would have been more competitive. I just think there's a lot that needs to be addressed this offseason, and I think Brad Stevens is the guy that'll do it. And I think he's going to come in there and approach issues head on and be like, yep, we need to clean house a little bit here and get rid of some of these guys, and we can get a lot of in return to set us up to win a championship, because that time at this point is just so overdue, and like it's just been so long now. And I think there's just a lot that they need to do. And I trust Brad Stevens to be the guy that can really make those moves and make that happen. And I'm just hoping that, and other teams are only getting better. I mean, the East itself is not easy. There's teams that are going to be tough in the Eastern Conference, even if the Celtics do get better, and they need to realize that. And they're just not at the point right now where they could had any chance of competing with teams like Philly and Brooklyn. And we knew this. Even Milwaukee, I don't think they could beat Milwaukee in the playoffs this year either. So I think we saw that as the season progressed, and we just realized that this team was just not equipped yet with the roster makeup to go and win the whole thing.
Well, listen, as a Laker fan before, Mike, as a Laker fan, Gab, make sure you guys take a little bit longer to figure things out.
Oh my gosh, yeah,
just a little bit longer.
Lakers, I mean, yeah, a lot of people wanted a Lakers Celtics finals last year.
Yes, yes.
And I was so upset that the Lakers won, because that just will always annoy me every year. But you know, everything though that happened last year with Kobe, like I kind of was like, okay, like if the Lakers are gonna win anytime, like it can be now. But anytime after that last year, I don't like seeing that. Anytime after last year, I'm just like, all right, no more Lakers championships. Like I'm done with that. And so I was so happy that they lost. But I mean, the Suns are just so good this year too, though. I mean, who knows what's going to happen them now, because we don't know when Chris Paul is going to be able to come back. But I'm hoping he can, because they're who I'm rooting for the rest of the way. I would like to see them win it all, and I'd like to see Chris Paul win a ring with them. I think that'd be cool. I mean, the Jazz are probably going to win that series if Kawhi is not playing, because the Clippers were looking really, really good. And I said they cannot let the Clippers get hot. But I think with Kawhi out, I mean, PG is probably going to, I have a feeling that he's going to play really, really well, and we might see kind of like the KD we saw from last night.
No.
But I still don't think they're going to win. I think that the Kawhi stuff changes everything, and I still think that Utah is going to win that series.
Yeah, listen, no Paul George here. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
Season P.
Waldo George will not do anything tonight. Not happening.
I just don't want Brooklyn to win it all, like anybody but them.
That's fair.
But I think they probably will go to the finals. But whoever they are playing against, I will be rooting for, no matter who that team is.
I'm with you.
I watched the Phoenix Suns with Chris Paul, and I think that I watch them and I feel like they're the best team in the NBA.
Yeah, they're so good. They're so good. And Devin Booker, I mean, I love watching him play too.
He's ridiculous.
And I think if Chris Paul is playing, I think that they have the best shot at winning the whole thing.
Fair.
I mean, Brooklyn.
Unless Brooklyn and their, cast of clowns, comes around and blows everything up and makes us all hate the NBA again.
I know, right? I mean, Kyrie, if he's not playing, then they're not winning the whole thing.
No, they won't.
Yeah, I think they need all three of them.
Yeah, they do. They do. It's a different team without all three of them.
All right. Gabby, we asked this to everybody that we interview. There is no wrong answer. Actually, I guess there are wrong answers out there, but I'm assuming you're not going to give us one. And the amount of responses that we've gotten have been great. The amount of reactions that we've gotten have been great. So here we go. Who is the greatest athlete of all time in any sport?
All time. Oh, gosh. People might not like people might not like my answer to this, to be honest with
She's
you.
going Brady.
Oh boy, she's going off the board.
I am. How did you know that? I am actually going to have to say Tom Brady, and I say that for multiple reasons, not just because I'm a Patriots fan, which I mean, partly it is because I'm a Patriots fan, but also because it's. I mean, how do you really like? How do you really like? I mean, the guy is. I mean, look
She's
at.
speechless.
I mean, he just won another Super Bowl last year. Like that pretty much solidified that answer for me.
All right, listen. As soon as she said nobody's gonna like to say this, I said Brady.
Come on,
They're not.
asking someone who hosts their own Boston sports oriented podcast who the greatest athlete of all time is.
I shouldn't have built that up.
I wonder who they could pick.
You set that up, Mike. This is your fault.
Yeah,
I shouldn't have built that up.
I'm just saying.
The reactions we get, the
know, right?
amount of different answers.
Really,
that we
yeah,
get. I'm so interested to hear it. Tom Brady. Okay, well, whatever then.
He could win again this upcoming season too.
It's not happening. It's not happening.
If he does, I will.
Bucks are going to be very, very good again.
Listen, if he wins
the
again,
same team running it back. So
if he wins
again,
again,
be that bad.
Mike, if he wins again, we are boycotting football for the next year.
Okay? I was rooting for him. I did not want the Chiefs to win. I was rooting for Brady in the Super Bowl.
I mean, you must have been heartbroken when he left, though.
Oh, I was, and I still am, but I was rooting for him. Though.
You're not like super mad at him right now.
I still am, yeah, because especially because he went and won the Super Bowl with another team, and I was like, this could have been us, but no.
Why would you be stuck with Cam freaking Newton?
Why would you be mad at him? He's finally in a place that he can be himself. Do you see how happy Tom is?
Oh my God,
so happy.
Himself.
Twitter Tom is just is on fire right now.
I will say is that I will not be remotely surprised at all if Edelman now comes out of retirement and joins that team too.
You best believe. You best believe.
Gronk did, I was like, I knew that was going to happen. I was like, I knew that Gronk was going to come out of retirement and go there, so I would not be surprised if Edelman does the same thing.
Especially if somebody goes down, trust me, Julian will have a call.
Yep, I know. That's what I mean. If somebody goes down and gets injured, like Julian Edelman's going to be on the phone.
Listen, if Antonio Brown doesn't work out there,
that's what I mean.
Julian Edelman is going to be the first person they call.
That's what I mean. I would not be remotely surprised.
Break the glass in case of emergency. That's exactly what's going to happen.
Unbelievable.
I love Brady though. Obviously, I mean,
how you like Mac Jones?
Patriots fan, but do I love Mac Jones? I mean,
do you like Mac Jones? Do you like Mac Jones?
I mean, I think with the system that he came from, I think the Patriots are the best place he could have ended up in terms of coming from where he came from. And I think that the Patriots are a team that he could really succeed with. Do I think the Patriots will win at least one Super Bowl with him? 100%. I am on that train. I don't think he starts. I think Cam starts to start the season because I don't think Belichick is going to start a rookie week 1. But I think I would not be surprised if partway through the season we see him, because if Cam does not perform, which he might not, then I do think we might see Mac Jones start partway through the season. But I mean, he's a step up from Jarrett Stidham, so I'm happy about that.
I can't wait for my man Mac Daddy Jones to get the starting job and take this.
Daddy Jones.
Mac Daddy Jones.
Cam Newton, I'm so over him. Like I'm not looking forward to that again.
He had a rough year, but listen,
he has more weapons now though.
Cam's garbage.
According to Bill,
right. Cam's garbage.
According to Bill has said that Cam has looked amazing.
Yeah.
What is he going to say? He's going to say he looks like garbage.
Yes, Bill will say that.
He's going to say it. Yeah, Cam looks like shit.
Bill will say that.
That's what he'll say.
He has said that Cam's looked really good.
Yeah. So. Listen, Bill will not kind of poo-poo it. He's going to be like, the player is not doing what we ask him to do. So,
said the same thing about Brian Hoyer.
Bill's the type of coach that will, I mean, if he's not good, he's not going to start him. That's not, Bill doesn't play games like that. So I think he was trying to give Cam the benefit of the doubt last year because of all the circumstances. And I mean, the guy got COVID, you know what I mean? And so I think there were a lot of factors, and I think he went out and just spent all this money in free agency, as we saw. And I think he really is trying to help Cam succeed, but he will not be afraid to pull that plug on him partway through the season if he's not living up to expectations, which is why his contract is literally based on, like, how much money he makes is literally based on how successful he is this year.
Right. Well, Gab, this has been a pleasure. This was fun. Thank you for giving us a Boston education in regards to the sports. Like, you knocked it out of the park. You are very knowledgeable about Boston sports. I love it. We'll have you on again at some point. Hopefully that you're not
over
too
the
busy
green monster.
Definitely.
Yeah, thanks guys for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Well, listen, this is Barry Grant Jr., host of the All Even podcast. That's Mike Guido over there. That's Matt Catarazzolo at the bottom. We see you guys next week.